Hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Rini Chaudhuri and you're watching Perspective. India's economy has scripted a remarkable story over the past decade. 10 years ago, India was considered to be one among the fragile 5 economies, a cause of concern for other nations. In a turnaround that made the world sit up and take notice like never before, India, in September 2022, surpassed the United Kingdom to become the 5th largest global economy. According to a recent report by S&P Global Market Intelligence, India is poised to overtake Japan and Germany to become the world's 3rd largest economy by 2030. India's GDP is expected to rise to $7.3 trillion by the end of this decade, says the report, and it will emerge as the 2nd largest economy in the Asia-Pacific region. With the Indian economy surging ahead, the implications have been felt across domains, from India's social fabric to its innovation ecosystem, and from its manufacturing prowess to its stature on the global stage. India's rise as an economic powerhouse has been lauded by bodies like the International Monetary Fund, which has called the country a hotspot for investment and opportunity. In today's show, we will try to understand what this projection by the S&P means for India and for the world, and what are the challenges we are likely to encounter as we take strides towards this milestone. We will also discuss how India's ongoing digital transformation, its demographic dividend, the emergence of disruptive technologies, and various policy initiatives can impact India's growth story. Joining us in this edition of Perspective are 2 eminent economists. I'm delighted to welcome Shri Rajiv Biswas, Executive Director and Asia Pacific Chief Economist at S&P Global Market Intelligence. I'm also delighted to welcome Professor Ram Singh, Director, Delhi School of Economics. The guests will be joining us virtually. Thank you, sirs, for your time.
It's a pleasure to be part of the show.
Thank you for the invitation to join you.
Thank you, sir. Professor Singh, if I may start with you. So let us start from the very basic of the topic. So what are the potential challenges that India may face in achieving this economic milestone that we are talking about today, and how can these challenges be mitigated?
So let me preface this question by saying that as to our objective to become, our aspirations to become 3rd largest economy by 2030, in terms of potential, it's very much there. We have all the potential, all the ingredients that are required for us to be touching this landmark by 2030. The direction, sectoral direction of different sectors, different dimensions of economy is also pretty much in that direction. Pace is also satisfactory. As S&P Market Intelligence report lays out, the Indian economy has been doing very well. Its performance, be it private consumption, be it investment, we are moving in the right direction at the right pace to make it, to realize our potential. Our challenges are going to be exactly what our strengths are. The challenges are going to be whether we can capitalize on youth dividend, demographic dividend or not. Our challenge is going to be whether the middle class, it keeps on middle income groups, or it keeps on growing, and at what pace. It's also going to depend on the labor force participation by women. It's also going to depend on whether our digital mission is going to be inclusive, and how much of public investment and private investment we are able to tap in digital infrastructure, in digital investment to invest, to promote 4.0 technology, the 4th industrial revolution, so to speak. Our growth story is going to be riding on these 4 pillars, and these are our performance on these 4 pillars are also the sources of challenge for us. So I will say more later.
Thank you, sir. So we've talked about the 4 pillars which will form the basis of our strides towards this landmark. Mr. Biswas, what impact do you think the global economic landscape and geopolitical factors have on India's aspiration to become the 3rd largest economy? And given the fact that we are now talking about this projection and we are aspiring towards it, are there any potential risks that are also associated with having this projection in the horizon?
I think this is, of course, our base case forecast that India will reach that milestone of becoming the world's 3rd largest economy and surpassing Japan by 2030. And also, I should also add that India would surpass Germany along the way as well, which is not as large as Japan. But I think the fundamentals that are driving India's economic growth are very much domestic demand driven. India's export economy is becoming more important, but the fundamentals that are very crucial for this projection are strong growth in private consumption and also continued rapid expansion in government investment and also private sector investment. Those are the crucial underpinnings of this outlook. Of course, the global economic environment is also very important. And what we've seen over the last 15 years is a huge upsurge in foreign direct investment coming into India. I think global multinationals in the US, in Europe, Japan, South Korea, and other large economies have completely reassessed the significance of India as an investment destination. And that's because the consumer market of India has been growing rapidly, and they see tremendous opportunities as India has become larger and larger, and of course now is the 5th largest economy in the world. So we've seen investment inflows into India rising from very low levels of about $5 billion per year back in 2005 to recent peaks of over $80 billion per year. So that's a very dramatic change between 2005 and 2022. So it's showing that multinationals are seeing India in a very different way and that they're very excited about the growth opportunities in India. I think when we look at the global landscape and what are the reasons why India is becoming more important for international investors and international firms, we have to also recognize that China's growth story has quite transformed from a high growth economy to a more moderately growing economy, and that many international firms are looking for new rapid growth opportunities globally. And the natural choice is India, because India is fast growing. It's the fastest growing G20 economy this year. And we expect that it will continue to perform very strongly over the medium term. And multinationals who are looking for earnings growth opportunities around the world are seeing that India actually is at the top of their list. Of course, there's other dynamic economies such as Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, but India, of course, is a much larger economy than those. And so that is why I think that there's been this big reappraisal. And one of the challenges facing Japan, South Korea, the US, and also the EU is that their own domestic markets are quite challenged. We're seeing relatively low growth in the EU and also in the UK. Japan is growing at a very slow pace, and South Korea is also facing headwinds. So for those multinationals who are looking for new opportunities to grow their earnings,
we'll move to a slightly different aspect. So you talked about how India presents a very exciting set of opportunities for multinationals, and the world looks at India as a very attractive destination for investment and for different kinds of opportunities. So in this context again, Professor Singh, you mentioned India's demographic dividend. So can we talk about how India's demographic dividend can help drive economic expansion? And on similar lines, since you mentioned the steps that should be taken for increasing our labor force participation ratio, can we talk about how we can increase women's participation in the workforce more effectively, and how, therefore, this can further fuel economic growth?
Sure, certainly. So, as to the demographic dividend, we have a huge potential. Today, there's no economy that can match India in terms of potential of demographic dividend. The Indians in working age years, that ratio is among the largest. For emerging economies, it's certainly way above developed economies and our competitor Chinese economy. So the way demographic dividend works is that it gives us very productive workforce. More people there are, more output they can generate,
Right.
more growth they can generate. They also tend to be big consumer of quite diversified consumer and service baskets. That means that they also make the growth self-sustainable by providing indigenous local demand. They also tend to be technology savvy. They are more adaptable in adopting new era technology. And growth, a lot of growth in India and in the world is going to come from productivity gains caused by, facilitated by artificial and big data analytics. So, youth are major adopter, user of technologies. So that also is something our unique strength. Moreover, people in their young age, employed in their young age, tend to save more. That gives us savings to invest. And it is our tested model that whenever in the years and phases where we saved more, we invested more, our growth rate has been very high. So in coming years also, the same phenomena is going to replicate itself, providing sustainability and vibrancy to growth. So this is how demographic dividend works.
Right.
A crucial dimension, which is unique to India, is the low labor force participation for women in working age in India. So it is low by international comparison. My assessment is that if we can increase labor force participation of women to make it 45% of workforce, that itself can give us additional 3-4 percentage point GDP growth. So we may actually not only be able to achieve the target of 7.3 trillion economy, we can actually surpass it if we are able to encourage our women in their productive years to take part in the workforce. So how we can encourage women to take part? It will require a host of measures, ranging from improving quality of their education, first of all, increasing their enrollment in higher education in vocational training centers,
Right.
also creating conducive environment at workplace so that women with children expecting that they have facilities, they have all the provisions that are needed for them to be able to work. It will also require some fiscal measures which can be used to incentivize women by way of tax break. And more importantly, it will require some changes in mindset at our societal level and also at household level. But if we are able to tap in this potential, we can deliver a unique Indian experience, Indian story that can not only match but even be more impressive than Chinese growth story.
Thank you, sir. We'll take on from something you mentioned, which is the role that youth play in helping a nation adapt to technology. And Mr. Biswas, building on the idea of disruptive technologies that have become so important, not just to Indian economy, but to the world at large, we are talking about quantum computing. In fact, India has just launched the National Quantum Mission. And we're talking about artificial intelligence. We just mentioned big data. We are talking about unmanned aerial vehicles. India is playing a very critical role in unlocking space technology, which in turn has spillover effects for other sectors of our economy. And India, in fact, is the world's third largest startup ecosystem today. We have more than 100 unicorns. How do you assess the role of technological advancements and innovation in propelling India's economic trajectory?
This is very much the heart, I think, of India's dynamic progress in recent years. And I think technology has become a crucial backbone of India's rapid growth. If we go back 20 years ago, I think the role of technology was more limited, but we've seen very, very rapid acceleration in the growth of India's capabilities. Firstly, in terms of software, really providing a lot of software backbone for multinationals all around the world. But now what we're also seeing is a transformation of the hardware side, where India is becoming also a leader in the Asia Pacific region in many areas of hardware, and that will continue to develop in the next decade. I think this is a very crucial driver of economic growth for India, because as you rightly point out, the future is increasingly about digital transformation, and also generative AI is going to be very crucial to many processes, both in government and in the corporate sector. So I think it's one of the key megatrends that's transforming the global economy, and India is very much at the forefront now of that process of change. So I think India has gone from being, not performing that strongly on technology if we go back 20 years ago, to now being a global leader. And as you rightly point out, a very clear example of that is India's leadership now globally in areas such as aerospace, and also in space technology,
Right.
sending, of course, exploration missions to the moon, and maybe to other areas of the space as well. So I think that's really shown how India has evolved to a very advanced economy. And I think we're in a world where the global leaders of the future, the economies that will lead the world economy, are going to be the technology leaders. And so it's very crucial that India has now already established itself as a leader in technology. And of course, that's also important for jobs creation. That when we talk about the labor market and talk about opportunities for participation of various segments of society, I think what's going to be very important is the growth of
Right.
jobs related to technology.
Right, so
And
on these
the big
lines,
talent
we're
pool in
talking
India.
about the opportunities that technology presents to various sections of the society, and how, in fact, technology can be a great leveler. So while we are on this topic, India, as Sir just rightly mentioned, is in the middle of a digital transformation. In fact, our data says that 850 million internet users across the country are actively using, internet, and we have digital public infrastructure. This, in fact, is the buzzword which even Prime Minister Narendra Modi is invoking time and again. We have digitized taxation systems, and 46% of the world's digital transactions are in India. What this data suggests is that, again, digitization has helped play a very important role in furthering financial inclusion for the country at large. In fact, the World Bank president very recently mentioned that the extent of financial inclusion that India has achieved in the last 6 years would not have been able to be translated to reality in 47 long years without the measures that have been taken. In this context, sir, can you shed light on the implications of India's economic growth and the technological progress and digital transformation that we're talking about for income distribution, poverty alleviation, and in bridging inequities in society?
Well, I think when we look at the overall structure of industry, it's going to be very crucial in all areas of industry, both in manufacturing and in services, that you're getting much greater technological inclusion, and also that we're having this rapid digital transformation of India's corporate sector, and also that many of the unicorns that are emerging are very much linked to technology. And so I think that is going to be a very big driver of jobs creation. It's already generated a lot of new jobs, but over the next decade ahead, I think that focus on technology is going to be what really will differentiate India's growth path compared to many other emerging markets in other regions of the world. So I think that technology leadership is fundamental to India's successful growth path that has already been achieved and that will be happening over the next 2 decades.
Right, sir. On these
So,
lines, Professor
I
Ram Singh,
would
would you
add,
like to add something?
yes, sure. So you're concerned about implications of growth for poverty and inequality
Right,
is a
right.
widely shared concern. But we must realize that with growth comes employment, income that enable millions of households and individuals come out of poverty. In the period where we have been able to pull out millions of Indians out of poverty, those periods have been of high growth. So the future high growth is a sure recipe for bringing another round of millions of individuals out of poverty in India.
Right, sir.
Moreover, growth generates revenue that allows government to fund merit goods like health and education. And these health and educations are great enablers of upward mobility. So with growth, not only poverty levels are bound to come down, will come down, but the issues arising on account of inequalities can also be addressed by public funding of health, education, and other social welfare transfers. All this will be possible through high growth rate. And these 4O technologies, artificial intelligence, big data analytics, other advanced technologies that you have mentioned, they are going to be great contributors. They can be great contributors to our growth in employment sector, which can be labor intensive, generating millions of employment.
Right, sir.
Also in service sectors, and more importantly, for agriculture, our reliance on agriculture still remains substantial. These new technologies have tremendous scope for enabling our farmers to go for precise irrigation, precise use of inputs, to reducing wastage.
Right, sir.
Farmers' income
Moving
goes up.
to a slightly different tone, Mr. Biswas, my question to you. We're talking about the progress India has made in various domains. And you mentioned, sir, India's performance in comparison to other economies, other emerging economies in particular. So how do you think India's position as an economic power on the world stage can strengthen India's credential and heft in global multilateral organizations, particularly like the United Nations Security Council or the World Trade Organization? How can our performance or our rising economic trajectory impact our position on organizations or platforms of this scale?
I think we've already seen a very significant change in the engagement of other countries to India as a result of India's rise over the last decade, with India now becoming the 5th largest economy. And I think that was very much evident at the recent G20 summit in New Delhi, where India played a very important role in catalyzing more engagement with other developing countries. We've seen that India, of course, has been a very important player in the BRICS grouping of nations, and also that bilateral relations between India and some of the very large advanced economies, such as the US and Japan, have really advanced very, very rapidly in the last decade or so, as those countries have also recognized that India is a very large economy and a key global power. But if we look at the decade ahead, and we see that, according to our forecast, that India's GDP will become $7.3 trillion by 2030, and that it will
on this
become
note,
bigger
where
than
you're talking
Japan.
about the forecast for the decade ahead, I'll take a quick question from both of you before we close the show. When we look at the journey ahead, and the world is talking about India at 2047, we are talking about Viksit Bharat and our vision for the journey ahead, what do you think can be one game changer which can transform the vision or the perspective of Bharat at 2047. Professor Singh, can we go with you first?
Yes, my bet is on education and skilling for digital era. That's going to be the key to many things.
Right. Mr. Biswas, what according to you can be that one transforming factor which can transform the perspective of India as the world sees it?
I think as India becomes the world's third largest economy, the greater engagement with multinationals is going to be very important. I think greater engagement with the leading governments or other democracies around the world, like the US, the EU, Japan, and much greater engagement with their multinationals will bring in a lot of new investment. I talked about India already getting about $80 billion a year of investment. It could become much higher, and that will generate jobs. It will bring in technology transfer, and I think it'll create tremendous bilateral relationships with these huge other economic powers in the global economy. So I think that is the very big change that will be happening over the next decade. I think we're just at the beginning of that transformation where we're going to see tremendous bilateral engagement with the US, Europe, and Japan, and also other economies like South Korea and Southeast Asia that will help to transform India's economy. And also India will help other developing countries in their progress as well. So I think India on the global stage is going to play a much, much greater role in 10 years' time than what we've seen previously.
Absolutely, sir. Taking your words, you've said that we are only at the beginning of this transformation, and India at the global stage will definitely have a lot more to contribute, and the world is going to see the nation in a very different light in the days ahead. I thank both my guests for this very enriching conversation. We have touched upon very valuable insights ranging from agriculture and services sector to the role that the youth, that women, and that all sections of society play in transforming a nation's journey and how the world, how the globe perceives the country. Thank you, sir. That's it for this edition of Perspective. Thank you, viewers, for watching.